G'day, and welcome to the AOS Coach sneak peek into the Stormcast Eternals Battletome that Games Workshop was kind enough to send me an early copy to check out. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of my initial observations with a match play focus. As always with these previews, I'm going to avoid as many lore spoilers as possible and really just focus in on the rules. Kicking us off with one of the most exciting updates in the Battletomes for 3rd edition is a digital code. Now, at the back of the book, you'll find a unique code that you can see that you can cash in once. Once you've redeemed it, it's done, you've got it. Now, at the time of recording, the Age of Sigmar app is not fully released, and I've been unable to unlock the book digitally. However, for players like me, this is a massive win because I like to have all my books electronically. It means I don't have to carry nearly as much things to events. It allows me to list write on planes and trains and literally anywhere that I happen to be, or if I'm playing a game, it means I can easily access it without bringing in someone to carry all my additional books. So for me, massive win and great step in the right direction. Now, honing in specifically into the Stormcast, the way that you build your army has fundamentally changed. Now, to kick things off, you've got your Storm Host. Your Storm Host remain the same per se. You still get to choose one of the 8 Storm Hosts, whether it be Hammers of Sigmar, Hallowed Knights, your Celestial Vindicators, your Anvils of Heldenhammer. That hasn't changed. But what has changed is the way that the sub-allegiances are structured. In the past, and if you looked at previous Battletomes or Battletomes that are actually out there that aren't even Stormcast, you'll notice that when you take a sub-allegiance, it will give you a command trait, an artifact, it'll give you a command ability, and it'll dictate often your first choices. With the Stormcast sub-allegiances, you are no longer required to take certain command traits or artifacts as your first choice. And we'll talk a bit more about those options later. Players from 2nd edition will notice that Shock and Awe is no longer an allegiance ability. However, it is one of the 4 options for your command traits. Broken Realms Morathi introduced a set of rules for the Stormcast which were very different to what you were normally playing, and that was something called the Stormkeep. Now, what they've done essentially is migrated the 2 sets of rules. So you've still got your Scions of the Storm, which allows you to put down a unit on the tabletop, and then for every 1 unit on the table, you can put 1 unit in reserves and bring it down in your movement phase. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can tap into those Broken Realms Morathi rules, which are now your legal rules, and they are now counted as a Stormkeep. So you've got 2 options, whether you want to build a Scion of the Storm army or you want to build a Stormkeep army. Depending on which one you pick, you will gain a bunch of keywords, and there'll be some additional rules. I mentioned earlier about the Scions of the Storm, which allows you to place 1 unit in reserve for every 1 unit on the table. You put them down outside of 9. That really hasn't changed. If you weren't familiar with Broken Realms Morathi, there are a couple of really cool rules that you're going to get access to. One of the big ones is 1 in every 4 of your units can be a coalition Cities of Sigmar unit. So that means you could bring in a unit of Phoenix Guard, you could bring in a Free Guild General on Griffin, you could bring in anything from the Cities of Sigmar range. That's just a couple. You could bring a Phoenix, you could bring a Hydra, you could bring a Gur Battle Mage, whatever it might be. There are some additional rules, things like your Cities of Sigmar units will get additional bravery if they're within range of a Stormkeep Redeemer. And there's also a really interesting rule. I don't think it was in Broken Realms Morathi, but I really like it. And what it is in the 1st and 2nd battle round, your friendly Stormkeep Redeemers, so this is not Scions of the Storm, this is your Stormkeep side. If that unit is contesting an objective partially or fully within the territory, now each model is going to count as 3 when contesting an objective. So that's massive. In addition to that, starting from the 3rd battle round, that also then extends to objectives outside of your territory. So in the first couple of rounds, really easy to defend your home objective because your models are counting as more. And then from battle round 3 and onwards, it means any of your Stormkeep Redeemer units that are contesting objectives anywhere on the table will count as 3. On top of that, if an enemy unit ends a charge move within 1 inch of that Stormkeep Redeemer that is within 6 of an objective, they'll do some mortal wounds on a 3-up. So really great at defending your home objectives. And if you don't go in that route, you can still go into that reserve, that 1-for-1 reserve piece, come down, burninate your opponent. Now, the customization doesn't end there. I mentioned earlier that your sub-allegiances do not require you to take a specific command trait and artifact, which means that you've now unlocked so many great options. There are some changes, but ultimately, you've got some really good stuff coming. You've got 4 command traits to choose from. I mentioned Shock and Awe being one of them. You've got Staunch Defender that allows you to re-roll the amount of damage that you use with the Shield of Civilians. There's a +1 save through some conditions through the Envoy of the Heavens. You've got 4 options. You've got some additional command abilities. So instead of your sub-allegiance giving you a command ability, you can choose one of 6. You've got 9 different artifacts to choose from, 3 from being forged, Stormforged weapons, 3 from the Heavens Wrath armor, and then 3 from the artifacts of the Tempest. So there's a couple of really cool things like, the Obsidian Amulet, allowing the bearer to ignore spells and endless spells. You could be looking at some things. Now, if you are old Stormcast, you might recognize things like the Blades of Heroes or even the Hammer of Might, which are 2 of the 3 forged weapons, are relatively unchanged between books. But then you get some additional rules, things like the Fangs of Dracothian does mortal wounds in addition. So there's a little bonus there. So there's a whole bunch of artifacts, which is great. You did lose, though, your standard treasures, your mystic lights, your celestial staves, and your scrolls of power. They are no longer a selection, unfortunately. So if you had like an Azeroth, for example, with a mystic light, or you had a wizard with, a scroll of power, they aren't one of the selections anymore. There are 6 spells to choose from the spell lore. My personal favorite would be the Stormfall, which casts on a 5, has a range of 12. You pick a point on the battlefield within that 12, and you roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inch. And a roll of a 3, that unit can't pile in. So it's a nice little way to defend yourself, to restrict the amount of damage coming back to you. Very similar to the Shark with the Net. The other spell that I really like is Celestial Blades. That adds +1 to the wound roll from a melee weapon within 12 or within 18 of the caster if it is a Night Lord or a Dracothian keyword. There are 3 prayers to choose from. There's also 6 mount traits to choose from. So the level of customization through Stormcast is through the roof, which is partially some of the challenges with me previewing this, is because there's just so much great information. Previously, when you chose your sub-allegiance, you had to choose a ability, a command ability, a command trait, and an artifact of power defined by that sub-allegiance. And I did mention earlier that in the new rules, that is really broken down. So we've already talked earlier about the spells and the prayers and the things that are coming to you already and you can customize, but you are going to get some extra rules. So depending if you take the Hammers of Sigmar, the Celestial Warbringers, the Astral Templar, some of these are going to unlock battle line, which I'll talk about, in a hot minute. But, you also get some additional rules to really double down on the type of army you want to build. Some of my personal favorites early on would either be the Hammers of Sigmar, which allows you to get a 6-up ward save while they're in range of an objective. Or it could be the Knights Excelsior, which gains you a +1 to hit and wound if there are more enemy models than your Paladin. So if you're someone like me who might be thinking about taking at least 1 or 2 units of Annihilators, this would work really well because your Annihilators come in units of 3. You might not want to reinforce them. And as long as there's more than 3 models, you're going to get +1 to hit, +1 to wound, which I think brings them down to 2s and 2s from memory. But either way, some really nice rules. But as you can see on the screen, there's way more different rules depending on, maybe you're an Anvils of Heldenhammer. If you've kept your eye on the latest White Dwarf, you will notice that armies like Sons of Behemat have been gaining faction-specific grand strategies, battle tactics, and core battalions. The good news for you is you're now getting them too. In this book, you're going to get 3 new grand strategies to choose from specific to Stormcast. Now, from early observations, I'm believing that they are harder to achieve than the General's Handbook choices. However, we don't know how long we're going to sit in General's Handbook 2021. So this might end in a month's time and it might become a whole lot harder. So, keep that with a grain of salt. Know that you've got these as an option. And it's not forcing you to not take one of the other battle packs. So if you like playing your Gur one and you like Hold the Line, or you want Pillars of Faith or whatever it is, you could always still do that. if I was going to pick one of these new ones, I would probably pick the one that's more focused on the dragons, like the Dracothian Defiance, and I'm definitely going to be getting one of those dragons. So probably I'll be a little bit biased towards dragons maybe in this video. I'll try to keep it at bay. I'm very excited about dragons. You've also got access to 6 additional battle tactics, and some of them kind of feel a little bit focused to the different builds, whether it's a Storm Keeps or the Signs of the Storm. If, again, I was grabbing one of the dragons or 2 dragons, or I was building around, some of the smaller dragons or even a Stardrake, things like the Dracothian Destruction or a Matter of Honor would be popular to me. Some of the other ones seem situational, and again, I don't have to just choose from this batch. I can still choose from the ones in the battle pack. Stormcast have also gained access to 3 core battalions for match play. Now, these rules are not new, so you're not going to get anything unique that you're not getting in the core rulebook. So you're still getting Strategist, Magnificent, Unified, Slayers, all that stuff, right? It's all very, very similar. But the way that you're seeing the organizational structure will change. You'll notice there the Brotherhood command, for example, allows you to take 2 commanders, which isn't really a thing in other armies. I would love, by the way, a brother commander in some of my armies and get 2 of those. But, if I was going to build my force, I mentioned earlier 2 dragons, I would definitely be thinking about the Brotherhood command. However, for me, the other one, the Redemption Brotherhood, would be a great way to reduce the amount of drops in your army. It might be a nice way to really boost out your force, maybe in conjunction with the Battle Regiment, bringing yourself down to maybe a 2 drop as well, while extending the amount of both commanders, sub-commanders, as well as a whole bunch of troops in the force. But if you are going to go down the Ballista route, and I think the Ballista has changed a little bit and it's looking a bit nicer, you may find the Soul Strike Brotherhood equally as valuable, especially because you get that free all-out attack or Unleash Hell that doesn't require a leader there to activate. One of the cool things for Stormcast players is that you have gained a unlimited, or not unlimited, but there's 21 different options to build your ideal army, specifically around battle line. Now, your Judicators, your Liberators, your Sequitors, your Vanquishers, your Vindicators are always battle line, regardless of which part of the book you're going to build around. However, there are 15 other options that you can unlock either by your sub-allegiance. So you'll notice the Knights Excelsior, Hammers of Sigmar, the Tempest Lords, and the Astral Templars are going to unlock battle line. Or if your general is a Knight Judicator or keyworded Stardrake or Dracothian, you'll also unlock some battle lines. So me being a bit of a dragon person right now, I'm looking at how do I make potentially those Stormdrake Guard battle line. Alternatively, I mentioned Annihilators. Annihilators are hot. I'll talk a bit about them a little bit later, but if you haven't seen the War Scroll, really good. You might want to unlock them as battle line, so you may want to go down the Knight Excelsior route. Now, why would you want to make them battle line and not just regular troops? Well, I guess it depends on if you want to double reinforce them. So knowing that a regular troop can only be reinforced once, and I could reinforce the Annihilators from a unit of 3 up to 9 if they were battle line. That is expensive though, and they're quite costly in their points, but that's just an example of why this one might be valuable to you. There are some other really big changes and smaller changes across the board. Being that Stormcast has, almost probably 80 War Scrolls, you will notice that there are small changes. You'll see that some of your foot heroes have lost their command abilities, which kind of came as a surprise to me. And I wonder if this is going to be a trend moving forward with some of those 5 wound and 6 wound heroes not having a command ability, or if they do, it's just you can action all out attack for free, all out defense for free, something generic as opposed to some of these quite meaty, synergistic kind of command abilities. You also notice that some of your War Scroll have changed. You might have noticed if you're a Soulblight Gravelords player, your skeletons, for example, used to have 2 options, swords or spears, and they kind of merged them into one profile. And some of your units have had the same thing. They've kind of merged it into a single profile and, phasing out some of those older rules. Some of the key changes that I've noticed in the first edition style Stormcast, this is the very early, 2016, 2017, Couple of things I'll call out for you is that the Celestin Prime has gained a 4+ ward save, and it's already got the 3+ armor saves. This Celestin Prime is a tank. I already loved him. As a Cities player, I am chuffed. But get yourself a Celestin Prime. I think it's really quite good. Your Knight of Xeros. Now, this was one that I was always worried about, and it kind of happened what I thought was going to happen. And the Knight of Xeros used to have a reroll ones ability, a bubble, and unfortunately, it lost it. It turned into a +1 to hit bubble. Probably no surprise given that rerolls are being phased out of the game. It also lost its once per battle mortal wound lantern. Used to be able to do, I think, D3 or D6 mortal wounds to a demon unit within 8 inches, I think it was. But, you know, for a lot of Cities of Sigmar players, especially who would bring that Stormcast unit in, the Knight of Xeros to get them that reroll ones to hit, I can see that the Knight of Xeros is going to be working from home for a while. The Knight Heraldor lost its ability to make Stormcast units retreat and charge. It used to be able to do retreat and or run and charge. Gavriel Shoreheart lost the 3+ command ability, so it used to be able to add +3 to the charge. Gav has lost it. Liberators have gained +1 to their save, as long as half the unit still has shields. So as long as you don't reduce the shields and just keep with the special, you know, Grainhammer or whatever it is, you'll still get +1 to your armor save. And what's really cool is at the end of the combat phase, it will deal D3 mortal wounds on a 4+. If the enemy unit is within 1 inch of the Liberators and within 6 inches of the objective. And remember earlier, the Stormkeep did have some interesting rules by being able to do some mortal wounds and do some protection around the objective. Liberators would just kind of synergize with that style quite nicely. Also, your Dracothian Guard. I know Cities of Sigmar players were freaking out about this because there was some leaked war scrolls around the Dracothian Guard not having a shooting attack. Good news, folk, they still have their shooting attacks. Your Dracothian Guard, still put them in living cities, you're going to get it. It's all good. Looking at some of the second edition changes, this is the models that came out around Soul Wars. Your Aether Wings surprised me. They went up to 65 points, which hurts. They used to be, went from 50 to 40 to 45. They're now 65 points. So they can still retreat and charge, which is great, but 65 points makes you really reconsider. Aether Wings going to give me value. Do I bring an Endless Spell? Do I go for the Triumph? Uniting Cantor lost its Spirit Flasks, so you used to be able to drop some bombs if someone charged you and do some mortal wounds. That's no longer available. And a really interesting update to the Vanguard Raptors. And I always love the long strike Raptors having a 30-inch range. The hit and wound profile had switched. So it used to be, I think it was hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. Now it's hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, which is actually a really good change because you could always all-out attack and get it on 2s and 2s. It still does the 2 mortal wounds when an unmodified hit roll of 6 happens. However, the one thing that kind of shocked me was that you used to be able to use it in combination with the Aether Wings, and then the Aether Wings could countercharge your opponent if they were within a certain range. But they've actually now lost that. So you can't use your Aether Wings to counter an opponent who's trying to charge your Vanguard Raptors. The Knight Aquila, Rider of the Wind, has changed, and instead of it being a generic, it was like a random, like, you know, it was a 6d6 or something it was, it's now just turned into a flat teleport. So you could just teleport anywhere across the board, no dice roll required, as long as it ends outside of 9 inches from an enemy. So pretty consistent with traditional teleporting and units coming in from reserve in the game. I mentioned earlier the Celestial Ballista had changed. One of the changes I really liked was that the lightning shot has changed from, it used to be a thing on hitting on 3s, it's now wounds on 2s, and it's gained some extra Ren. So it's now Ren 3, and it's doing D6 damage, although it did lose its exploding D6 hits. So some slight changes, but overall I think the Celestial Ballista has gained a little bit of strength, and it might work really well if you were looking at that artillery-focused core battalion. Now, your third generation models, which are the models that are coming in 2021, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of changes, a lot of great models. I can't talk about them all right now, otherwise I'll be here for 10 years. So I'll call out a couple of ones that really stood out for me. First off, the dragons. It's the thing that kind of caught my attention. The dragons both have 18 wounds, both Mufasa and Scar. If you haven't seen the meme, check it out. It's hilarious. But both of the dragons do have both 18 wounds. They both cost 600 points. They are 3 up saves. Neither of them have a ward, which kind of surprised me. I expected them to either have a ward save or have way more wounds than 18. I also expect them to be over 600 points. They are unique as well, and they will take up one of your leader and behemoth slots. So I imagine this is going to be a big chunky model, maybe on a 130, 160 base. Who knows? But it's hard to tell right now. Now, the blue dragon, is it I'll call him Kron now, Krondus, I think it is. That is more of a utility wizard. So it still packs a punch. It is a dragon. Like, let's be real here. It's a dragon. But it doesn't hurt nearly as much as the red one. So the wizard dragon will cast 2 spells and it will unbind 2 spells. Its signature spell is an interesting one. It goes off on a 9, so it's a bit of an aggressive, hard spell to cast. I imagine you are probably sitting on the backfield near Arcane because it is a range 24 spell. And if you successfully get it off, you can either debuff a unit's rend to hit, to attacks, or it's saved by 1. So you could reduce some things down, which is quite fascinating. On the other side, you've got Karazai, I think it is, or red. We'll call it Red Dragon Scar. It is -1 to hit in combat. Its tail profile is based on the amount of wounds within range of it, which is really cool. It's going to do a whole bunch of damage. It does like 2 damage. I think a pop hits on a 3 Rend 2. You know, it's quite aggressive. This is the combat dragon and probably the one I would go for. The rule that really interests me with the combat style dragon is that when it destroys a unit, it's going to gain some boosts. It'll either gain +1 attack if it kills a hero or a monster. It gains +1 to its run and charge roll if it kills a unit that has a wound characteristic of 3 or more that wasn't a hero. Or it heals 1 wound if the enemy has a wound characteristic of 2 or less. So depending on what you're doing, and it does stack, I believe, from memory, but don't quote me on that one. You've got the Stormcast Chariot. That one surprised the heck out of me, mostly because I thought it was going to be a little bit better than the Drakespawn Chariots. Chariots aren't that good generally in the game, but you are seeing that it is essentially a mini Stonehorn. And why I say it's a mini Stonehorn, why it doesn't do the amount of damage in combat like a Stonehorn? When it charges, Stonehorns, what they do, and there's some rules in Ogre Moor Tribes, is that when you roll your charge roll, the amount of dice, you basically, you do a heap of mortal wounds. So I think was it a roll of a 5, I think it was, a 4. So let's say I roll the charge roll of 9. I would grab 9 dice and I would roll them. On a 4+, I would do a mortal wound before combat started. So this, I know Ogre Moor Tribes, for example, they will use a command ability often to re-roll the charge if it's not a very good one, even if they were outside of 3, just to increase the amount of mortal wounds that they put out. It is a 12 wounds, so again, a lot of wounds. I expected way less. That 12 wounds on a 3-up save, doing mortal wounds. This is a wonderful little... I mean, it's a great model. I think we'll definitely see them on the table. Annihilators have 2 different war scrolls, very similar to the old, Liberators, where you had, the hammers with shield, or you had grand hammers. So if you go with the hammers, it is a 2-up armor save, which is rock solid. They've got 3 wounds apiece, and they come in with 3 models per unit. Obviously, you can reinforce or double reinforce if you get them as battle line. When they set up on the table, an enemy unit within 10 inches will take some mortal wounds on a 3+. But why I really like Annihilators is that they get to re-roll their charge in the same turn that they're set up. So this will probably reward the Scions of the Storm type builds more than maybe the Stormkeep, who don't have that coming in from reserve ability. And being able to re-roll the charge is awesome. Finally, the other unit I'll call out, no surprise, I talk about dragons. Here we are, the Stormdrake Guard. Now, the Stormdrake Guard are the smaller style of dragon, certainly not as big as our 2 big boys or even, the Stardrake. Why I really like them is, 1, I can make them battle line. They have a lot of wounds. They have 9 wounds, 3-up armor save. They ignore spells and endless spells on a 4+. As a battle line unit, I take them in blocks of 2, but there is a separate option that I can take them as a single, which I thought was really fascinating. A single is not battle line. I can't just cheese it out and just do 3 units of 1 Stormdrake and kind of get my battle line options. I have to take them in units of 2. Two of them are worth 285 points, or 1 for 145 points. But the other rule that fascinated me, and I really like it, is coherency is normally within 1 inch of the model, right? That would suck with this type of dragon. Instead, coherency with the Stormdrake Guard is within 3 inches, not 1 inch. So it allows you to take up a bit more board space and not just having to have them tag team together super close, which would be rather annoying and, not intuitive when you're trying to move them around. So I really like that, and I hope we see more of this 3-inch coherency in the future. But, as always, the true list tech is really going to come out once we have our FAQ. And the FAQ is going to come out approximately 4 weeks after the book hits the shelf. So we've got a couple of weeks. Let's see what changes, what doesn't change. And then we can get really into the lay of the land. And, I've only skimmed the surface in this video, because if I did an in-depth video review of this particular book, it would take me 10 years, because there is 80 war scrolls alone. There are 8 sub-allegiances. There are 2 different ways to build, whether it's a Sign of the Storm or the Storm Keep. Then there's all the customization within that to the artifacts and the spells and the command abilities. There's so much options, whether you want to go Liberators, whether you want to go Evocators, whether you want to go Dragons, whether you want to go, there's so many different options. And, the Storm Keep is probably going to really benefit those old school Liberators, especially, while, some of the Signs of the Storm, especially, like we just saw the Annihilator rules, you could really see some of those newer models doing really well. But not to say that you're restricted, mix and match, find the combinations, but, there's a lot you can play around with. It doesn't surprise me that the re-rolls have disappeared. The older rules have been disappeared. Losing some of the War Scroll command abilities for some of those smaller heroes did catch me off guard. And like I mentioned, my Knight of Zeros will be working from home for the near future. I mean, the +1 to hit bubble will be nice still, especially, not having to spend a command ability, a command point, or if you happen to be dealing with leaders who often get roared at, that might still be a way to get around it. But like Cities of Sigmar, I feel like it's going to take some time for us to refine these lists and really find the nuggets of gold outside of what's maybe obvious. And as you can expect, I will be doing list reviews in the near future. I'll find a couple of Stormcast players. We'll find a couple of different builds out there, and we'll talk properly and put this all into theory and try to find out what type of rules and combinations that they're tapping into to make the most of this. But I would be curious to hear from you in the comments section. I know there's been a lot of previews. There's some leaks. There's probably other content creators who are doing their own version of this. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. What units and rules are you most excited about? And again, I've only skimmed the surface. If you are someone who is looking at building out a Stormcast army, I'd highly recommend jumping into my Discord. Click the link in the episode description, because we talk and chat about lists all the time. And I have a whole bunch of passionate Stormcast crew who are going to want to chat and break down this book, share their experiences, maybe play some online games and kind of really work out what the gold is here and how do we get ourselves match play ready. But I hope you appreciated this preview, and there's going to be more of this coming soon. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.